call the clerk.
First reading, a bill for an act to ensure access to GPs in regional areas and for related purposes.
Give the call to the honourable member for Colette.
I move that this bill be now read a second time. Mr Speaker, today I rise to introduce the Doctors for the Bush Bill 2024. The rural doctor shortage is at crisis point. It's a health disaster unfolding before our eyes, and its consequences are devastating. All over central western New South Wales and around country Australia, doctors are leaving the bush and they're not being replaced. In the electorate of Calare, the rural doctor shortage crisis is being felt in communities big and small. Gulgong had 4 doctors, but no longer has any at all. This is putting pressure on the larger towns like Mudgee. It has 2 medical practices and they are both no longer accepting any new patients. Practices in communities like Canowindra and Molong have also lost doctors and are also closing their books to new patients or adopting a locals-only policy for appointments. In Wellington, it now takes 2 months to see a GP. The impacts this crisis is having on the health of country people are as concerning as they are shocking. I spoke to one doctor in our area recently who met with a patient with advanced cancer and who had not been able to get in to see a doctor and had therefore missed out on vital treatment. The rural doctor shortage crisis has been made much worse because country areas no longer have priority for overseas trained doctors. Before July 2022, if an overseas trained doctor or international medical graduate, as they're known, wanted to practice in Australia and bill Medicare, they had to work in a country area for up to 10 years. These country areas were known and are still known as distribution priority areas. Bonded medical students also have to complete return of service obligations in a distribution priority area. For many rural areas, this policy was a lifeline, providing competent GPs where there were none and ensuring that country people had access to basic medical services. But in July 2022, Mr Speaker, all of that changed. The government upended the distribution priority area system, for the first time allowing outer metropolitan areas to be classified as distribution priority areas. All parts of Australia are classified according to what is called the modified Monash model. There are 7 categories ranging from MM1, which is a major city, to MM7, which is very remote. Previously, areas MM3 to MM7 were classified as distribution priority areas. To give people context, larger regional centres like Bathurst and Orange are classified as MM3. Lithgow and Mudgee are MM4. Molong, Gulgong and Canowindra are MM5. The government has now declared MM2 areas as distribution priority areas, thereby destroying—
Exactly the same in Queensland.
I take the member for Kennedy's important interjection. It's the same for Queensland. And what's happened is it has destroyed the priority area for overseas trained doctors that country areas once had. They have lost their priority for these doctors. This has meant that areas such as Fairfield, Hornsby, Warringah and the outer suburbs of Sydney and Melbourne now have the same priority for overseas trained doctors as country areas. When you look at the map, the whole state of New South Wales is now basically one big distribution priority area, except for the inner suburbs of Sydney. How could this possibly be? Sydney does not have a doctor shortage. The Doctors for the Bush Bill 2024 remedies this blatant unfairness by restoring the priority that country areas should have by legislating that modified Monash areas MM1 and MM2 can't be classified as distribution priority areas. It will mean that country areas once again have priority for international medical graduates. This restores the distribution priority area system to that which existed before the last federal election. I would therefore expect that every single coalition MP will be lining up to support this bill. This crisis isn't going away anytime soon. It's predicted that Australia will be short 10,600 GPs by 2031. At the same time, demand for GP services is expected to increase by 58% over the next decade. There is a fundamental unfairness and inequality in access to health services in this country. In the central west of New South Wales, we call the Great Dividing Range the Sandstone Curtain. It divides city and country physically, but in so many other ways as well. There exists a stark divide in health outcomes between people who live in the cities and those who call the bush home. It's a divide as high as the Great Dividing Range itself. In fact, the further away you live from a city, the sooner you're likely to die, and that's the cold, hard truth. Statistics from the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare reveal that, devastatingly, people who live in very remote areas die about 15 years earlier than their city cousins. With close to one-third of the Australian population living in the regions, how can this possibly be? The answer is simple. Country people have less access to doctors, such as GPs, who are often the first point of contact when someone feels sick or has a health problem. According to the Department of Health and Aged Care, in the 6 months following the changes to the distribution priority areas in 2022, the number of GPs that moved away from country practice jumped by more than 55% on previous years. These are the changes that the current government brought in. Now the government will say that more overseas-trained doctors are coming to Australia than ever before, and they're right. They are coming, but they're just not coming to country areas. We know this because our medical practices are at breaking point. And this just adds more pressure to already overstretched hospitals and their emergency departments. Overseas-trained doctors are choosing to practice in and around the major cities because there are many different reasons. For starters, they can earn more money. City people have higher incomes than country people. It's as simple as that. Doctors can charge more. There is more support for GPs practising in the cities than there is in the country. Practices are larger in the cities. Workloads can be shared. Workloads can be easier and better managed. There's more peer support. Colleagues can be consulted about cases. This is why I've requested that the Health Minister visit our region and see for himself this unfolding crisis. We don't want to berate or belittle him. We want to work with him to find solutions, and the Doctors for the Bush bill is part of the cure. My office is constantly receiving correspondence from constituents concerned about this issue. Kathleen Bruce writes about the GP and paediatrician shortage. She says, "My husband and I have always worked really hard, pay heaps of tax. Is it not too much to ask for some health care for our children? It's Australia. It's a human right." Jodie Lewis writes, "I love it here and don't want to move again, but my partner will consider selling and moving if my daughter can't access a doctor when required." Ian Marsh, the president of Gulgong RSL sub-branch, writes, "We are losing veterans from our community who, after settling in our wonderful community post-service, and have now found that they are not able to be supported through their post-service lives by our health system. I have grave fears for an adverse outcome as veterans are forced to battle alone due to the paucity of services." Mr Speaker, the government needs to get serious about alleviating the rural doctor shortage. Together in this House and the other place, we have the power to cure this crisis. Country people demand and deserve nothing less than equality in access to doctors and medical services. Lives are at stake and immediate action is required from this parliament. I urge all members of this House to support the Doctors for the Bush Bill 2024 and achieve better health outcomes for country people. I commend the Doctors for the Bush Bill to the House and cede the rest of my time to the member for Kennedy.
Is the motion second? I give the call to the member for Kennedy.
Speaker, I take great pleasure and it's a great honour to be able to second this resolution. I do not hope to do justice to it as much as the previous Speaker, one of the better addresses that I've heard in this parliament. Having said that, Mr Speaker, for 7 years of my life I carried around in my briefcase that I take everywhere with me the names of 6 doctors, overseas doctors, because I was determined that as the Member of Parliament for the Midwest that Julia Creek would always have a doctor, because before I went into Parliament it never had a doctor. In theory it was supposed to have, but the doctor never made it there, and they ordered another doctor to go there and he'd agreed to go but he wouldn't. So I carried these names around, overseas doctors that I could ring up that would come over to Australia and take up the position if it was offered to them. Now, what overcame that problem was one of the great ladies of Australian history, Lady Dr. Pearl Logan, who gave us equal education opportunities in country areas. But she also was chairman of the body. My daughter got all the praise. She was secretary of the body, and Professor Ian Wronski was, I think, the real driver. And they got the first medical school built in 44 years in Australia. And that overcame dramatically the problem, because 18 universities then walked through the door that we were able to open. The sandstone universities didn't want any competition. They wouldn't expand. So for about 20 years, we just sat there with the same number of doctors coming out. But now there's 18 universities. But, Mr. Speaker, I listened in horror to my colleague from Orange giving those figures. Why hasn't it solved the problem? Well, you know, when they get through now, in a study that I've seen, they feel that they should take it easy.
Order.
Or get a government job.
The members'
be more highly paid than any
time
other.
has now concluded. The question is that the bill now be read a second time. The time allocated for this debate has expired. The debate is adjourned, and the resumption of the debate will be made in order of the day for the next sitting.